Welcome back, V.O.C. YouTube channel. Major news. This is why I waited to do this episode, because of the anticipation that this could happen today. And that of what I'm talking about is the Jim Harbaugh being suspended by the Big Ten before their game against Penn State this week. There's a lot of awkwardness, craziness. Just I don't fully understanding from me as someone that I believe Michigan did this, but it's like I don't fully quite get it. So I'm going to jump into that, talk about my picks this week, but let's jump into it.
Third down for us.
You look so Jim Harbaugh suspended for the last 3 regular season games of the year. He can coach during the week, but cannot be on the sidelines during games. So does that mean Jim can now be the guy in the stands behind the other team's bench with a camera? I don't fully know. Michigan says it's going to seek court legal action. No surprise. They're going to sue the Big Ten over this. Basically, the Big Ten said, you know what? We're going to go after you. You being Jim Harbaugh, him being the face of Michigan. We're going to go after you. And Michigan has said, up to this point, you come after us, we're going to go back at you. This is very interesting. The Big Ten has come out and said, this is what's crazy to me. This is all from Pete Thamel of ESPN, who's done a very good job of being on top of this story, getting information, and relaying it, I think, very well when there's been so much out there. Certain people have been very in tuned in this, and Pete's been one of those guys that's been very in tuned in getting information and getting it out to people and keeping it very honed in to where it doesn't go too crazy and, expansive. And with Pete, you can trust what he's saying. So Pete said that the Big Ten has come out and said that they have not yet received any information inciting that Jim Harbaugh was aware of the sign stealing, and that this is not a sanction against Jim, but it's against the university. So basically, the Big Ten saying, look, we don't care if Jim knew or not. We have evidence. Most likely, this is what the Big Ten's thinking. We have evidence that you did this. We can't say that you didn't do it. You can't say that you didn't do it. You did some type of sign stealing that goes against the integrity of the Big Ten and the rules in the Big Ten and the rules with the NCAA. So we're going to go after the school. The face is Jim Harbaugh. So therefore, we're going to suspend your biggest face. What's the biggest face Michigan has? Jim Harbaugh. So he said, you know what? To come at you, to give you the worst embarrassment, hurt, we're going to suspend Jim Harbaugh. Not do anything against the school right now, not do anything against the players, not do anything against anybody on the coaching staff. The only other guy they could have was Connor Stallions. He quit last week. They said, we're going to go after Jim, which is, it's not totally crazy. The thing that I have a problem with in all of this, and it's to me, it's, do I believe Michigan did this? Yes. Do I believe Jim knew something about this? I don't know. I would like to sit here and say he had to have known something of it. I feel like it was one of those where it's like, look, Connor Stallions, this guy's a wicked mind. He's getting great information. He's probably not doing the right things to get the information, but I don't entirely know, and I don't want to know. Do I think the coordinators do? Without a doubt. The video has shown him standing next to both coordinators, offense and defense, talking in their ear. They're waiting on their calls for him, Connor Stallions, to give them stuff. But this goes back to when there's any scandal in college football, the head coach is, at the end of the day, responsible. The most recent big one, I would say, where a coach has had issues where Mel Tucker's a separate thing, because that Mel Tucker is the prime example and the prime guy that's not innocent. Like Mel Tucker did the crime, right? Would be Pat Fitzgerald Northwestern, where there's no evidence that Pat Fitzgerald knew anything about the hazing at Northwestern, but he's still fired. It's still your program, right? So maybe if Jim didn't know, he should have known, right? Like that's what it is, and it goes back to that. But my biggest problem is the Big Ten did it today. Michigan left to go to Penn State at 1 p.m. And I'm not one to sit here and stick up for Michigan very often, because I do not like them at all. No bone in my body. Do I like Michigan? Not afraid to admit it. I hate them. Do I think they cheated? Yes. Do I believe that they deserve to have punishment? Yes. But to suspend Jim Harbaugh on Friday, when the team left at 1 o'clock to go to Penn State, they're in the air flying. When this comes out, they land, all this comes out. There's now been a picture surfaced that Jim's on the tarmac with a group around him. Supposedly Michigan, when they were aired, didn't really know anything about this, but you do it today. You could have did it Thursday. You could have did it Wednesday. You could have did it Tuesday. You could have did it Monday. So what did you have today that you didn't have yesterday, you didn't have Wednesday, you didn't have Tuesday, you didn't have Monday? So that would be the interesting thing. I don't get that from the Big Ten's perspective of, we're going to do it, as they're in the air. What? That makes no sense to me at all. I do not get that. Look, the process in this whole thing has been sped up from the Big Ten. The NCAA is probably going to do a quicker investigation on this than they normally have on anything else, because they have and they must believe that the sign stealing has helped them win games so far this year. Some could make the argument that Michigan's 9-0, but technically they're only 2-0 because, maybe 2 or 3 games, 2-0, 3-0, because 2 or 3 games were the only times that they didn't have this, before we knew about this, right? So they're only 5-0 or 6-0. No, they're not, so 5 or 6 of those wins don't really count, right? Because you're going to look at that. But that's why the process has been sped up, because the Big Ten has to believe that they won games this year because of the sign stealing. And so the Big Ten looks at it and goes, you know what? What we're going to do is we're gonna work as fast as we can to get as much evidence as we can, and we have to go after them as soon as we can, because we cannot allow them to keep going through this as a team that is unscathed, undefeated, with sign stealing or without sign stealing. So it's very, very interesting. Michigan's already come out with some jabs towards the NCAA. Michigan said the suspension against them sucks because other teams steal signs too. Yeah, I get that. The report came out earlier this week that Rutgers, Purdue, Ohio State ganged up to get Michigan signs, and they're communicating back and forth. Great, that's fine and dandy. You can do that. The question is, how did they get them? Did they get them the same way you did, where you had guys going all over the country? One guy in particular going and dressing up in Central Michigan gear on the sidelines, having guys knowing Venmo payments of buying tickets to go to different games around the country to videotape. That's illegal. That's why you're in trouble. It's not that you just stole some signs and you used them. So that's what's going to be interesting is, yeah, other teams do it too, but did they do it to the lengths that you did them? That is yet to be proven. I don't think so, in a way, right? Because to me, I look at it as most likely Ohio State, Ryan Day started this investigation, potentially with his brother. When you have an investigation that you want looked at, you have to get your own evidence, and then you hand-pick it and give it to the NCAA. NCAA just doesn't open investigations. Someone has to come with them with already investigative tools, facts, rhythm, everything to them, and then the NCAA takes over. So to me, it's like, most likely Ryan Day started this in Ohio State. Why would they do that and start this if they stole signs illegally too? Stealing signs during, watching film, during games, while you're playing, there's nothing wrong with that. So to have that argument is like, oh yeah, but everybody was doing it too, man. Like, I only did it because he did it, and he did it because I did. It's like, you can steal signs and you can communicate with other teams, other coaches. That happens all the time. The length that Michigan wanted to, it makes it different. So to bring other people into this, that's what you do when you're guilty, because you're trying to deflect. But look, this thing's going to get ugly fast. Every day more stuff came out about this. It's going to continue. This is going to be hourly updates. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get worse. my biggest thing is if this is what the Big Ten has done so far, so quickly, and they're not done. This is just what they're going to do right now because they feel pressure and they feel like the integrity of some games that Michigan has played in have been damaged and diminished. So they're going to look at it and go, this is what we're doing now. My biggest thing is, though, what is the Big Ten going to do beyond this, past the season? And then what's the NCAA going to do? Because if the Big Ten's doing this now, worse, I feel like, is going to come for Michigan eventually. So that's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, do I think Michigan cheated? Without a doubt. Without a doubt. They cheated. The proof is in the pudding. Do I think Jim Harbaugh knew something about it? I would go yes and no. I'm still 50-50 on that. Do I think coordinators knew? Yes. Should Jim have known? Yes. It's all of those things where do I think Michigan cheated? Without a doubt. Cheaters in the fact of the way they got the information is not the way that you're supposed to get it. They broke rules, broke Big Ten, NCAA laws to get the information. But where I will stick up for Michigan in a way is why the Big Ten does this now. I think it's idiotic. I think they're trying to mess with them a little bit. I think they're trying to hurt Michigan as much as they can going into their biggest game of the year so far. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It's going to get worse before it gets better. A lot of things are going to be said between the Big Ten and Michigan. That's going to be interesting. Time will tell. But as of right now, Jim Harbaugh is suspended for the last 3 regular season games of the year. All right, moving on to my picks this week. I was 5-2 last week. Have 7 games this week. Pretty big ones. We'll start out with Miami 6-3 at number 4, Florida State, who's 9-0. Florida State's 14-point favorite. I think this game is close early, but I think Miami finds ways to screw things up. But I also think Florida State's talent is going to prevail them a little bit in this game. They struggled last week against Pitt a little bit. I think they come out this week, and I think they dominate. All right, number 18, Utah, 7-2 at number 5, Washington, 9-0. Washington's 8.5-point favorite. They had that big shootout with USC where they won, rushed for, feels like 10,000 yards. This game's going to be interesting because it's going to test the toughness of Washington. Utah's a very tough team. They're not as talented as Washington when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, but they're tough, they're physical. I think this game is going to be very close. I think it's going to be chippy, but I think Washington's talent on offense is going to help them prevail at the end. Number 13, Tennessee, 7-2, minus 2.5-point favorites at number 14, Mizzou, who's also 7-2. Missouri played very well last week at Georgia. I was very surprised. I thought Georgia would come in and kind of do what they usually do. Just kind of roll and test their power at home. But Missouri stood up to the challenge. Missouri's a very good football team. This game's very hard to pick. I'm going to go with Missouri just because they're at home. If this was at Tennessee, I would go with Tennessee. But I think Missouri this year is better than Tennessee. All right, the ugliest game of the week. Rutgers 6-3 at number 22, Iowa, 7-2. Iowa's 1.5-point favorite. The over-under on this game is 28.5, which is, I think, one of the lowest in the history of college football. I think Iowa wins. I think they find somehow a way to win. I could see this game being 9-6. Gross. I would take the under on the 28.5, but I think Iowa wins. It's going to be nasty. It's going to be gross. There might not be... both teams might have under 150 yards of offense, but I think Iowa wins 9-6. All right, USC 7-3 at number 6, Oregon 8-1. Oregon's 16-point favorite. This game's sneaky. This is like one of those sneaky games of the week where, USC just fired their defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch, which they should have did years ago. You come in, new defensive mindset. You still have Caleb Williams. He cried after last game, let all his emotions out. They can still be in games because of the offense. You think they tweak a little bit things on defense. Oregon's a very good team. They're physical. They're good. But I feel like 16 is too much. I think Oregon wins, but I think USC covers in this game. And this is one of those games where I wouldn't be shocked if USC won. Last week I was like, I picked USC to beat Washington. They had chances. Defense killed them. I think this is close. And I think USC plays. I think they still have a chance to put up a fight. And they showed it last week, especially offensively. I think they'll show it again this week. All right, last two games are major when you look at playoff potential teams and how this week really dictates a lot. All right, number 9, Ole Miss, 8-1 at number 2, Georgia, 9-0. 10.5-point favorite is Georgia. Ole Miss squeaks by Texas A&M last week. Georgia is in a dogfight with Missouri. I think this game is going to go Georgia's way, but I think by not a wide margin, but I expect them to cover. I'm all about the lane train. Choo, choo. I'm all about it. But Georgia last week has a physical game. I think they bounce back this week. And I think they say, hey, look, Ohio State, you're number 1. No. Look at us. Look at us. This is a top 10 team in the home. Look at us, man. We can still play football. So that will be very interesting. All right. Number 3, Michigan, 9-0, -4-point favorite at number 10, Penn State, 8-1. Penn State's only loss to Ohio State. This game is going to be epic. This game was going to be epic before the suspension of Jim Harbaugh. Now you have Michigan versus everybody, which that's all Michigan players wore, getting onto the plane. Don't blame them on that one. Do I think it's stupid? Yeah, but you got to do what you got to do. Free Jim Harbaugh is going to be back, which I think is gross, but now it's even crazier. I think the suspension helps Michigan. I think if you were a Penn State fan, you wanted Jim Harbaugh to be on the sidelines for this game. I think the suspension helps Michigan. I don't think Penn State. I think this is a better matchup for Penn State than the Ohio State game was. But giving the factor that this game is at noon, if this game was at night, I would heavily want to lead, I think, Penn State. But with it being at noon, the suspension of Jim Harbaugh, I think Michigan wins it. What will be interesting is neither team has given up a point in the third quarter. So if this game's close at half, or say Penn State has a lead at half, or it's tied at half, how does the third quarter shape out? Because that's going to determine a whole lot. But I think Michigan wins it. I think they win by 10 points. I think it will be 38-28. Truly believe that. 2 top 5 defenses, but I think Michigan has enough firepower to score some points, get creative, and I think just the emotion of wanting to go after and play behind their coach that allowed this cheating scandal to happen, I think will prevail them. But that will be very, very interesting. So look, that's this week. Look, Jim Harbaugh has to pay the piper for what he allowed to happen underneath him in his program. He is now suspended, 5-6 games of the year? That's crazy to even think about. Does this suspension fully go through? I don't know what happens in the next 5 minutes with this whole thing. But look, if you do the crime, you got to pay the time. Jim Harbaugh has to pay the time for the crimes that he allowed to happen underneath him. It'll be very interesting to see what continues in this and how they play this week. I think this helps them. And that will be very interesting to see. But with that being said, Jim Harbaugh suspended. Picks this week. Hopefully we stay on a roll. Another great week of college football. It'll be exciting to watch. Thanks for watching. That's going to do it.